Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of childhood abuse and trauma, parental violence and control, generational trauma, postpartum depression and mental health struggles, suicidal thoughts, marital challenges, and healing from emotional pain. Our goal is to share real-life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I am really excited for this conversation today. I have Tammy Cox with me. She is a dedicated transformational coach with a passion for helping women transform their lives and relationships. With a unique focus on inner child healing, Tammy uncovers the root causes of relationship breakdowns, guiding her clients on a deeply transformative journey toward rekindling emotional connection and love. Tammy's personal life journey was marked by significant childhood wounds, bringing her to a crossroads where she faced two choices: surrender to despair or embark on a path of healing. She chose the latter, committing to an inspiring voyage of self-discovery and personal growth, which shaped her into the transformational coach she is today. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. How are
Thank
you?
you for having me. I am great. I also think that this is going to be a really fun conversation.
Yes, yes. Just in your bio alone, you talk about some childhood wounds and having to face some pretty big things. So I'm going to let you just take the stage here to begin with and give us a little background on you and share whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and we'll just see how the
Yeah.
conversation goes.
Yeah. So many of us, obviously, we got to the place that we were at because we needed someone like us many years ago. And so that was definitely the case for me. When I became a wife and a mom, my triggers started going off,
Okay.
started triggering out of control. It got so bad to the place where I felt like I just couldn't contain myself anymore.
Mm.
And really, what had happened was all the wounds from my childhood I had packaged up and put on the shelf. And it wasn't till I became a wife and a mom that it all just came bubbling to the surface. When you think
Wow.
about wounds that fester underneath the surface and you just ignore them and ignore them, they start to, what do? They like pus, they swell, they bleed. So that's what kind of happened to me at that point in my life. And I really got to the place where I was at such a low that I was like, I am either going to take my own life because I can't live with this pain, or I'm going to find a way to heal myself. And so
Mm.
the journey was long.
Mhm.
I'd love to say that it was quick and easy, but it was not. It was long for me. But I really had to go back and unpack my really traumatic childhood. And if you want me to dig deeper into that, I absolutely can. I can go anywhere you want from that. But that's where I was at. And I think a lot of people are at when they get to adulthood and realize that they're not okay.
Mm. Yeah. And we have to look back on the beginning because there may be things we didn't even really realize until later, because as a child, you're not processing it that way necessarily.
Everything in our life as adults all stems back to the first 5 years, because the first 5 years is when our personality is almost fully developed. If we don't if we don't deal with those wounds, and every single person has them, maybe not as extreme as mine or other people have had, but if they do not deal with the wounds, what happens is it most definitely the patterns will
Mm.
they go from generation to
Yeah.
generation. They can shift a little bit, but if we don't repair the damage, what happens is we inherit our parents' pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just goes bloop onto us and bloop, we pass it on to our kids and here on and it goes. But when I had my first baby at 26 and I looked at her and she was so perfect and I was just like, I don't want her to go through any of the shit that I went through. I don't want
Mm.
her to suffer the way I did. And it haunted me. And so I really did it for them because I couldn't do it for myself.
Do you mind sharing some of the
Yeah,
childhood traumas you've had? Because I know there's probably people listening that had similar ones and would find some
sure.
comfort in that. Hmm.
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest things that happened to me, my father was controlling and abusive. And so
Okay.
there was physical abuse, but there was also just a lot of violence in my home. It
Oh,
was normal for us to fight physically on a daily
wow.
basis. There was just a lot of violence. But then there was a lot of manipulation and control. I wasn't allowed to be fully myself. I had to be who my dad wanted me to be. I couldn't say or think for myself. I had to fit in this mold, and we were very sheltered. And so it was 11 years old when my parents sat us down and said, "Hey, listen, we have this secret. Your dad is dying from AIDS."
Oh, wow.
And so this uncovered all the family secrets. When I talk about family secrets, basically the life we had been living, this sort of sheltered little super religious life, was shattered in that moment. And he died a month later.
Oh, wow.
And I wrestled with, first of all, I felt relief because my dad scared the absolute shit out of me. But then I felt guilt for feeling the relief. Here I was, I spent just about all of my high school years angry, bitter, resentful, shameful. I carried so much shame with me. And so I had all these things that I was experiencing very young. And so I just would hit these really low lows. There was like 3 points in time where I was severely suicidal. And
Mm.
I just did not know how to cope. I didn't have the ability to cope with those wounds or even tap into all the emotions stuck within me. And yeah, that's why I get to age 26, I become a wife and a mom. And if you know about our patterns, every time we have a new identity that comes in, like wife or mom, a new pattern sets in, a new programming from the past, from our upbringing, but then also from our parents' upbringing and their parents' upbringing. We have all these things that are tracked down to us. And so when it all came to a head, all the pain from the past merged with the present moment. And I couldn't hang.
Was,
So
was
that's,
it a specific event or just literally having your child and then, or was there something else that happened that triggered all of that for you to
there was
finally?
a series of many.
Okay.
Um, for with my first child, there was just that responsibility that I think scared me, which is pretty normal. And then with my second child, I had a really awful postpartum,
Mm.
which kind of it just amplified everything. So that was a place of my deepest, darkest low. I was 28 and it just took me to my knees. So it wasn't one big catastrophic event. It was many little things that kind of get piled on. But I think most of us have to get to the place. In fact, I tell my clients this, or anyone that's even considering hopping on the journey of healing. Sorry, the journey of healing. I believe that we have to be, before we even embark on the journey, because it is uncomfortable, we have
Hmm.
to be in so much freaking pain
Hmm.
before we take that step. And so sometimes I'll just tell them, you're just not in enough pain yet. Like I was at that place where it was a do or die. It was like, I'm either going to have to take my life or I'm going to have to find a way to heal because I can't live with this misery.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really beautiful thing because I think most people wake up when they're in that kind of struggle and pain and strife. Is they're like, they look around, they're like, what is this all for? What am I actually doing this for? And we get to ask those deeper questions. And yes, it's hard to be in pain, but at the same time, there's nothing more beautiful in all the world. And I do believe that we came here for that. I do.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your postpartum?
Yeah. Okay. For most women, I think like me, I didn't realize initially that's what was happening to me because I was depressed, I think, with my first one as well. When you're prone to depression because you have a lot of bitterness and unforgiveness, like I did, it doesn't take much to take you down into the lower states of on the emotional scale. So powerlessness is the emotion that if you stay in powerlessness long enough, you're down there in depression. That's really hard to bounce up. But when I started, I didn't know that I was depressed. In fact, when I look back now, I'm like, how could I have been so clueless? So my husband was in law enforcement and he worked at night and he'd leave. And I just remember, I think one of those epiphanies of what am I doing is he was leaving and he'd leave at night, which is when depression is like the worst. So I'm at home with my two
Mhm.
small kids. I had 19-month-old and my brand new baby. And he's leaving and I'm like on the floor, just absolutely bawling, begging him not to leave. And he hid all the guns
Oh, wow.
from me. Yeah. He was very concerned. One day in particular, he was so concerned that he sent his parents over to check on me because I didn't respond. So that was one. I don't know how I didn't know that I was in a postpartum, but you just don't know when you're that low. And it was probably about 6 months after that it dawned on me, oh, this is postpartum.
Mm.
It's just crazy how your mind gets so warped into you do the weirdest things and you're like, this isn't normal to that my husband is hiding the guns and sending people to check on me when I don't answer the phone. Yeah, that was
I think it's also something that nobody's talking about as much. It's one of those taboo topics. I think more and more people are starting to talk about it, thank goodness, now. So I think there's a lot of shame in it too, that if you have postpartum depression, there's this, I don't know, there's this idea around it that it's shameful and you're not supposed to because you're just supposed to be taking care of this baby and you're supposed to be so happy that you just had this baby. So I think it's a tough thing to
well,
probably.
that's why I think it's so important because you will not see it when you're in it. And if I could go back and even talk to my husband, because we were in a very unhealed state, our marriage was absolute shit at this point. But if I could go back and talk to him, I'd be like, let her know that she's not well. Hello.
Mhm.
Like my mom did. She saw some of it. And I remember with my first daughter, after I had her, she sat me down and she was like, are you okay? And I was
Mm,
like, what are you talking about? I didn't see it for myself. So I think it really is the people closest to us that have to tap us on the shoulder and say, "Hun, you need some support now."
mm.
Right. And even still, we could be like, "Wah." But when it came to my third child, and I had her, I had 9 year gap in between two
Oh,
and three.
wow.
So when it came to my third one, I did all the pre measures. No, I took all the, what is the word I'm looking for?
Precautions?
Yes, there it is. I ate my placenta. I took the pills, right? I did everything
Oh, wow.
to keep and just to be aware. The awareness, I think, is really, like you said, talking about these things is good. But if you're not, we tend to hang around people that are in the same place in life that we are. So they
Mhm.
don't have a different perspective than us. We
Yeah.
really need to be mentored by someone who's been through it and gone through it. But then also, I had friends that I would warn about the things of parenthood, me thinking I'm being super helpful. And that wasn't really helpful to them. It
Yeah.
was like discouraging. And here they are pregnant and they're super happy. And I'm like, I hope you don't get postpartum and try and
Mhm.
kill everybody. Like, so there's a way to say it, but not, but you know what I'm saying? The conversation has to go in a way of you got to be looking. I would just say the awareness is the power. If so, the
Mhm.
third time around, I was just very aware. I was aware of my thought life, which is what I teach all my clients. That is the key. The thought life awareness and the emotional state, being that aware, is really the key to overcoming anything in your life
Mhm.
and to really choose who you're going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, with postpartum, I think it's really something that the people around you need to tap you on the shoulder and say, yeah, that's not really normal.
Mhm.
Because my friends and I, we talk about our experiences together.
Mhm.
None of them had probably the extreme one I had, but they talk about like the thoughts that they had and wanting to contemplating drowning the baby. And they were more honest with themselves at that time. But I think it really, that's why I think it's so important for us to heal before we have kids. Like when I get a
Mhm.
woman who hasn't had kids yet and she's starting her healing journey, I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
You have no idea what you're giving to the planet by doing this inner work first because
Mm.
it locked my kids up. I
Oh,
didn't know it. I think that's just part of the programming. Like we don't know until we know. So
mhm.
it's just, but the thing is, it like have no shame about it because just like you messed them up, you can absolutely rewrite the story. So don't feel shame about it. But yeah, if you can prevent it, you're giving the world such a great gift.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more recently about the generational trauma, and it's so interesting to me because I feel like we're just touching the surface of that in science and all the things. And it is pretty crazy how I think our bodies are so amazing too, because they remember that stuff too. And so then you have these reactions to things that you don't even really understand, but it could be, oh, like you said, a trauma from your parents' life that was
Yep.
passed on to you. It's
Hmm.
so interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Epigenetics is there as they research it more and more, it's we adapt our belief system is it's 95%. If you haven't done any inner work, 95% of your beliefs were just passed down to you and you received it and you became
Mhm.
it. So that's why I encourage people like question everything. Why do I do this? Why do I believe that? Why am I okay with this? It's like question everything because you don't need to take whatever crap was handed down to you. There might be some really good stuff in there too,
Sure.
but there is some stuff that is not serving you.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that is societal too. And we're so ingrained with certain societal norms. Actually, just had a conversation earlier today with a gal that we talked about women in general and what we've been told from the world to believe about ourselves and stuff. And it can
Yeah.
be so, even though our society is moving forward and things are getting better for women and all the things, it's still so much there and it's so hard and it takes so long to break those beliefs for sure.
Yeah, but as the feminine rises, they have to go because
Yeah.
the feminine is all about creativity and
Mm.
love and openness and giving birth to new things. So as the feminine rises, we're going to see a lot more healing on the planet. We're going to see the divine masculine really heal. That's what I'm seeing now is like as the female is healing herself, now the masculine is like starting to release his pain. And I'm just watching my husband as I believe that we are the spiritual leaders. We are more spiritual in nature. We're more connected to the allness, right? Because all of life comes through us. As females, we give birth. But I'm seeing now that the masculine is starting to catch
Mhm.
on. They are starting to do their inner work and they are starting to just be these. Oh, I just think it's so beautiful what's happening on the earth. So, yes, there are still some old patterns that need to shift out, but nothing is going to happen like this.
No.
And that's because it would be very uncomfortable for us.
Yeah, that's true. And the men, they're just now trying to express themselves and their feelings and be able to be emotional and stuff. And I love that for them because they've been taught for so long to suppress it all. So I love seeing that growth for them
Hmm.
too.
Absolutely.
Let's back up a little bit to you said you fucked your kids up.
Yeah.
Can you dive a little deeper into that and what you mean about that? Because I don't know that there's many parents out there that would fully admit that. I don't know.
I told you, I'm like honest as hell. I
I
even
love
tell them when they
it.
bring stuff up to me, my oldest is 16, and when they bring stuff up to me, I'm like, I know, I fucked you up. I just,
Mhm.
here's what it is like with the patterns, right? I had an abusive dad that I grew to despise for many years. What happens when you despise someone, a parent? You become them.
Oh,
So, that's what I mean about when I had my kid, I was like, I got to change the patterns because I started to see that in me.
oh,
And so, like the controlling, not that I was as violent as him, because with every generation it gets diluted,
sure.
but just the desire to control who they be.
Mm,
Oh, you need to look like this. You need to behave this way. You need to act like this. That control part is what I had to really look at and say, why my kids didn't come here to be who me. They didn't come here to
Yes.
be the little version of me. They came here for their own reasons and for their own purpose. So
Mm,
why am I trying to? And for me, it was the religion. The
mm,
religion was a huge part of the control I brought towards them, is this is what we get to look at. And of course, the way I grew up religiously was women were down
yeah.
here. You ain't as important as the man's are up here. You're down here. You're a child, so you're even lower. And I have three daughters. Yeah, I had to really look at, like, when I say question your beliefs, I had to do that. I had to look
Mm,
at all these beliefs and say, I don't want to buy into this. This is
mhm.
fucking bullshit. And so I just took them one by one and just said, yeah, I'm not doing this one. I'm not doing that. I'm going to let my kids be absolute jerks if they want to be.
Mm.
I'm going to let them learn from their mistakes because there's no other way to learn. And I'm going to let them mess up as much as possible. And I will admit to you, sometimes that is very hard to do because
Yeah.
I don't want to see my babies in pain.
Sure.
And at the same time, there's no greater teacher. So I
Mm,
have to come to terms with the fact that my greatest teacher was pain.
mm.
My greatest teacher was the trauma, the abuse, all of it. And so I get to let them have their own journey and choose who they get to be and what meanings they want to make out of this life experience.
But that was something you learned later on while
Oh yeah.
parenting. Yeah.
In my healing journey, you
Yeah.
can learn it way earlier if you're more advanced than me and you are willing to own your life, meaning take radical responsibility and say everything in my life experience is because of me.
Mm,
Once we can get to that place, we can change any and everything about our life, but we can't until we lose the victim altogether.
mhm.
The victim has to die in every way, shape, and form before you can have everything that you want.
That's so deep. I love that because it's so true. If we just play, there's certain circumstances that things just happen in life, but for the most part, we create that ourselves. We make decisions that create some of the hardships and stuff. I currently have a family member that is walking a really hard road and can't seem to not play the victim anymore. And it's just so hard, but you have to take responsibility. You have to, because then you won't, if you're just blaming everyone else, you can't fix everyone else. You can't fix the universe. You can't fix that stuff, but you can fix yourself. You have control over that.
We can influence others. I am living proof that once we do our own healing, like I healed my entire lineage
Mm,
through healing thyself. And if we all did that, we would see a very different planet. No, we can't control. And at the same time, we can because we're the perceivers of our own reality.
mm,
So it gets to be as perfect as we say it is. The pain, perfect. It brought me to my awakening. The
mm,
trauma, perfect. Look at the gift it gave me. Sure, the heaven on earth is pretty freaking rad, but it's only rad because I was dragging on the ground for the majority of
mm,
my life,
mm,
freaking drug through like the most pain. And now I can experience these high highs because I've been down there. And
mm.
if you think about a person's life who's like this, I'm like, that is not what any of us, I shouldn't say that. Maybe some of us did choose to take this life as like the more blissed out experience. And some people are doing that. But I'd say the majority of us, we were growing from all the horrible experiences that we've endured because that's what develops compassion.
Mhm.
And compassion is such a gift.
Yeah.
I could not do the work I do today with my clients if I didn't develop the compassion by going through it all. So it's all for our good and for our growth when we decide that it is. And that
Mm,
can't be when we hold on to the victim story. We do have to let go of that. And of
yeah.
course, there's going to be times in our life when we're victimized, but that won't necessarily make us a victim.
Mm,
Like victims, because they're like the person you were giving the example of, where they always have a new victim story for you. Every time you
yeah.
see them, there's a new
Yeah.
one and another one. And I guess that's the experience you wish to have, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't. And that's the beauty of it is it doesn't have to. And I wish that more people understood that for sure because yeah, because then they could start their healing journey. So
Would be
tell me,
nice.
yeah. Yeah, because we all just want everybody to live their best lives, right? That's what I want for everybody. I just want everybody to be happy and live their best lives and do everything they want and be happy in their marriages and be happy in their work and
Yep.
all the things. But that's definitely a far fantasy from where we live right now. So,
And it's also, it's not really what we want because the polarity is what makes life so juicy. The
oh, that's
polarity is
true.
the reason why we came here. It's like the light can't exist without the dark.
Mm,
Fear could not exist without love. Like you can't have all of it unless you split it. So it's, you think you don't want a polarized earth, but if we didn't have a polarized earth, like we probably wouldn't sign up for it because we love expansion. We love to grow as these universal beings, as these, there's, we could never cease to exist. So why would we want our existence to be like this? So
yeah.
I know it feels like we want everything to be, but when we receive all of it as good, then it's like the polarity isn't awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had a lot of different types of guests on this podcast that have talked of many different difficult walks in life. And there are a lot of them that, when asked if they would change their journey, say, of course, there's certain things they would change if a loved one passed or something like that. But overall, it has brought them to who they are today. And so they're like, no, actually, I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't be who I am right now. Those lows are definitely defining, and that's when we grow the most.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never ending, right? There is, we're a
We're
work in
eternal.
progress
Yeah, we're
always.
eternal beings. So it's, that's why I tell people, like when a client starts with me and she wants so bad to be in that place where she feels the peace all the time. And I'm like, girl, you are eternal.
Mm,
There is no ending to you. After this lifetime, you shall be. Before this lifetime, you were. Like, there's no ending to you. And the reason why we have this impatience of, I got to have this thing now, is because we think there's something called time, when
mm,
we know from physics that there is nothing, there's no time. We created time, therefore it exists. But if we chose something different, there would be none. There's no such thing as time. Yes, I get the impatience because I'm a human being living in the system, in the matrix.
mhm,
But then I have to tell myself, no, because you are not this. This is where you are now. This is what holds your spirit for now. But once this thing, then what? And I can never cease to
mm,
be. So it's, if we get wrapped up too much in this one aspect of us that is the flesh,
mhm,
then we really limit ourselves, because our spiritual nature is far bigger.
mm,
It's where our power exists, and that's our eternal nature. Yes, it's fun to be a human. It's fun to taste, smell, feel, like all of that is delicious. And yet we have all those senses in the non-physical that we could experience as well, and that are, they're just far more delicious.
mm. I love that. I think letting go of the idea of time is really hard for, I'm just thinking of that for myself. And I'm like, oh, to think about, we just continue on afterwards. Oh,
Time is, yeah, Eckhart Tolle says time is the only, that's what creates the suffering. If we took the time out of everything, the suffering is gone.
yeah.
And if you think about that, so big.
Yeah.
Why I'll
Huge.
just say, take the time out of this when we're like so hard on ourselves because we think we should be somewhere that we're not. And it's,
Mm.
says who?
Mm. And then the comparison game sets in, right? Because then you're like, oh,
Says
that
who?
person's the same age as me, but they are so much further ahead than me based on their own, the way they're perceiving that person's life. But yeah, if you take away that time aspect, and it doesn't matter when you do this or do that or whatever, like, then that changes everything. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. That was going to be that
That
little
was
click for
juicy.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So your healing journey, you realized you were rock bottom. What did you start doing? Like, how did you start your healing journey?
Oh, girl.
Big question.
I told you I was really wrapped up in religion for a long time. So I was looking in there for a long time,
Okay.
and that can only get one so far, especially just the narrative. I wouldn't even say the religious part of, yes, the religious part, the part where human beings try and tell you, oh, yeah, you're just this, you're really
Mm,
small. They just have it so backwards. I'd say it's more like just the teachers of it more than the ancient texts. Because when you read the ancient texts, I still read the Bible because there's so much gold in there. And there's also a lot that could be tossed, not necessary for us in this time. But one thing it did teach me is first of all, it talks about how you are the very temple of the divine, that the divine is within you. Of course, the teachers don't tell you that, but I studied it for myself. I went in and studied it for myself as much as everything else I was studying. That was one step. But then when I came out of religion, then I started going to many different things and it opened me up. Mm. Nothing really took me as far as actually starting the trauma treatment.
Okay.
And the trauma treatment. So I tried all the therapies and stuff, and it was like a Band-Aid. It was like, it helped for a second. Didn't really do much. But once I got to actually the neutralizing of the trauma, when I started to do the internal work, the subconscious work, that's when I started to shift. Okay. That's when my transformation really I started to change. I had to excavate. I had to go in. I had to neutralize my traumatic events. And then I had to find what we call commands, which are the limiting beliefs that are controlling your life experience. They're literally creating your life, the negative aspects of your life. And so when I found those, that's when I had the big ahas, because I started to recognize how I created my life experience. I knew that I created it, but I didn't know how. And when I started to find the limiting beliefs, I'm like, oh, that's why. So my dominant limiting belief about myself is I'm unlovable. And so when you believe on a soul-based level that you are unlovable, how is that reflected out in your life? Every relationship reflected that out. Every romantic relationship with every person in my family, I could not allow anyone in because if they told me that they loved me, obviously they were a liar because I'm unlovable. I can't receive that information that goes against my belief system. So having that switch for me changed everything in my life. I could finally let my husband love me.
That had to take some work, though, right? To bring down that wall.
I'm still working on that wall, girl. And he is too. We both lost our fathers when we were young. We both had lots of trauma. We both had stepfather issues. We both had issues. So we're still working on those walls. In fact, we communicate about it. And we did last night, even just a beautiful conversation of, oh, I'm feeling myself in this area still blocking you out. Or when you say these things, or sometimes this or that. And we just can talk about it in an open way where there's no blame or shame. It's just observing our patterns and saying, I'm still feeling this sometimes. And I feel my wall coming up in these moments. And we just talk about it. But we all have that wall around our heart until we start to consciously start breaking it down brick by brick.
How did you teach yourself that you were lovable? I've struggled with my own self-worth just because of my fertility stuff and how that changed my view of my body and me as a and stuff. And I'm still very much working on that, but I feel like that is a long, difficult journey. What did you do?
Our journey is endless, I think. So if you look at an eternal being, once again, we have to come out of our humanness and say, okay, the humanness is an experience. The spiritual aspect of us is eternal. So if we're looking at us as just a body, just like this is who I am, and then once this is gone, I'm no more, we're making it us so small, eternal. So we're trying to fit all of our spiritual nature in this crystallized form, which is our body. We're not the body. I am hand. I'm not this hand. This hand has how many cells in it? Like millions of cells, right? Billions of cells throughout your body, and they all have an individual consciousness, and all that makes up your body, right? But then your spirit goes even outside of your body because your body is within your spirit. So if you're looking at it from just a human perspective, you're missing it because you are not a human being. You are a spiritual being having a physical experience. You came here to have this physical experience. You didn't come here because your unlimited self wants to limit itself or give it the experience of a limited self in order to witness itself, to remember itself, remember itself. So it's just, if we try and look at it through these human eyes and through this small piece of our brain, we're just not going to get the gravity of what we are. We are not a sex. We are not a body. We are not a hand. We are the literal embodiment of God itself. And all of creation is. God is in all of creation. Inside every cell of our body is what science would call energy and religion would call spirit, but it's the same stuff, and it fills all the billions of cells in your body has this stuff in it. And it is a scientific fact that energy can neither be created or destroyed. So what happens to that energy when it leaves the body? It can't be destroyed. So what happens to it? Yeah. So everyone has different theories about what that energy or spiritual matter does.
Yeah.
There's so many theories out there, but it's one thing I know for sure is it can't be destroyed. So
if someone's listening who is struggling, who also believes they're unlovable, what would you tell them right now?
I would tell them you created that story and you could create a new one at any point in time that you wish. And let me answer a question that you had, because I don't think I did. How did I teach myself not to believe I'm unlovable? And that is to one of those like lifelong journeys of, in those first 5 years, those subconscious beliefs get stamped so hard onto our subconscious mind, which is pretty much running the show 95% of the time. So you have to be very conscious and aware of it. So how I track it is I look when I get triggered, when I get sad, when I feel my pain deeply, which at least is one time a month, about 3 days before I start bleeding, is when I become very aware of my pain body. We all have pain that lives within us. I'm just very aware of mine, and I try and get as much out of my body as possible. And I use this time of the month to really focus on it, feel it, because here's what you need to know about emotions. Emotions cannot leave your body until they're emoted. Energy, emotion. You can cry them out. You can scream them out. I have so many modalities that I use to help remove pain from the physical body. That would be a whole podcast in itself. But
maybe we'll do another episode on that.
yeah, yes, or tune into my podcast. That's all I do is take people through processes to remove emotion, in hopes that everyone will do this for themselves, because we all have the ability to heal ourselves. But to be so in tune with that command is one thing, and then to instruct your subconscious what it chooses to believe. So am the temple of the divine itself. If I hold the divine, and the divine is equal to the vibration of love. They say God is love in just about every ancient text. If God is love and that love lives inside of me, then I am love. So how could I not be lovable when I am literally love? And so that's what I have to tune into, the fact that it's a lie, for one, that I created. And then second of all, that it's false. And the truth is I am love. And if you could just put your hands on your heart and just say, I am love, and see your heart opening. And I like to tell my clients, give it a color. And then I want you to wrap it around yourself. I want you to see that color as a ball around you. And I want you to give it away. In fact, I want you to expand it out till it covers the entire earth. You get to embody the love that you are, but only from this place of knowing that you're creating all of it. So when you go from victim to victor, you're understanding how you created your own life, and you're doing it on purpose. And so you're saying, hey, I created all these bogus beliefs. I'm going to identify them. I'm going to switch them out, and then work on that every day.
Oh, that's really good. So your healing journey then led you into what you're doing now, working with people.
Yeah, I take people on the shortcut version of what I did. Girl,
how long did it take you?
I mean, years and years. I'd say the last 5 years, obviously, the last 5 years have been massive, because we've had this huge shift on our planet. We have this huge shift on our planet. Our planet is actually vibrating faster than it ever has, which is why we see technology moving so fast. So we now have this beautiful time in history where we could utilize that frequency into our own bodies to allow our healing process to go much faster.
Mm.
So what I did in, gosh, 20 years. Yeah, 22
Yeah.
years since I made a conscious effort to start my journey.
Mm.
People can have it in a year, I
Mm.
think.
That's amazing. So what does
Yeah.
it look like to work with you then?
I do some sort of inner child healing once a week.
Hmm.
I have you on homework to create the new pathways in the brain and
Hmm.
to really identify those beliefs and then put in the new system, right?
Hmm.
And create the new identity. That's a big thing. The old identity was created for you, the new identity gets to be created by you.
Mm.
And then we create the life experience. What do you want to experience? What do you want these love? Because most of my clients have issues with their most intimate relationships. So, romantic, interpersonal relationships, the closest one to them. And so that's really what we start with. We start with their identity, healing their trauma. And then what now from that new place, who do you want it? Who do you get to be?
Mm.
And then from that new place, what do my relationships get to look like? And then finally, what's my life purpose? Because almost always when we move out all the negative shit, what happens is they recognize what they came here for the first time.
Oh, wow. And how long have you been doing this work?
I'd say years and years because I
Well,
told you I was a
yeah.
hairstylist. And so I did a
Oh,
lot of work
yeah.
for free. I've
Yeah.
always been on this journey. So I've always done it to some capacity or another. But to do the inner trauma work with people,
Mm.
to do the inner trauma work with people has probably been what, 3 years? 3 years with the trauma work, with the deeper modalities.
Hmm. What made you decide you wanted to do that over anything else?
I think it's just for me, I think a lot of people are scared of the dark
Mm. Oh, yeah, 100%.
and the shadows. And I just am like the darker the better. So when I have a process and I'm taking someone into the deepest, darkest parts of themselves that they're too scared to go to by themselves. I'm just intrigued by that shit. So for
Mm.
me, it's like the deeper I can go, the darker I can go, the better, because I'm just not scared of that shit. So I think just as I grew and I developed, I just kept reaching deeper and deeper and deeper because that's really how we shift faster. I know that people are so scared to go. I'll have someone right before their session, they're like scared. And I'm like, I get it. But if I told you that at the other end of this, you're going to feel so much freaking peace. Like
Mm.
the first thing they usually say is, I feel so light. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, do you have any idea how much shit we moved out of your body?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to feel light and you're going to feel lightheaded. So drink a lot of water. We just detoxed the crap out of you.
Hmm.
But it's like, you can give up that you're living with all the pain anyways.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself, a lot of people are like, la, 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 but the pain's there anyways.
Yeah.
The pain's there anyways, and you're living with it anyway. So why not just go down, tap into it, move it out?
Yeah. Be
I say
kind to
it sounds
people.
so easy, but it's
Yeah.
not, girl.
Yeah.
I have to make it sound like that because I have to convince them to do the work because it's what
Yeah.
they really want. It's what their soul wants. It's what we all want as human beings. It's just very few have gotten over the fear-based system that we've been indoctrinated into. We're all still living in that fear-based mentality. Many people will never choose to heal themselves because they're just so scared of the dark.
Ugh, yeah. Which is sad because then they go their whole lives without getting to go on this journey.
And they
Which
get to come back and experience the same lessons over again because
mm,
when we don't get the lesson, we don't get the lesson, and we don't get the lesson, we don't get the lesson, what happens?
mm,
We just got to keep going through it until that's why I say it's the pain that really shifts us. Because when we've experienced so much pain and we're like, no more, like we have to get to that place. We have to. So unfortunately, most of us have to learn the hard way.
yeah.
I'm one of those, girl. I learned every freaking lesson the hard, not the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So I'm just one of those really special people that just they just, so
Oh, it's really
yeah.
hard to watch. I'm
I
just like, why are you choosing this path that does not have to be that hard? I'm trying to help you so you don't have to, so it doesn't have to be that hard. But, you
That's
know,
so funny because I talked to another podcaster a couple days ago and she has the same thing with a sister. And I'm like, you, when you're first on your healing journey, you want to save the world. Like you want,
yes.
and we all go through this, like this self-righteous, like, I can save you. And I was like, well, you can't push them until they're ready
Oh,
because
you
there's some
can't.
people that have not, where as the earth is splitting, there's those that are descending, they're going down, and there's some that are ascending. And we need the ones to descend in order for the ones ascending to do. So
Mm,
we need each other. And they came here for whatever their contract was. Like, who said that's not their divine contract? And who said that doesn't get to make you ascend, right? And
yeah.
so with when we take the judgment out of it, we could just see it for what it is and say, because I have a sister who's developmentally delayed severely. She actually received the most abuse at the hand of my father because she refused to comply with his demands. She received a lot of physical abuse and she's developmentally delayed. In fact, she's all the way out to lunch. She's in a level 4 group home, which is the
Mm,
highest level you can get. She's violent. We all were violent, but I learned how to deal with my violence. She never did. And she lives a literal hell on earth. She's created just, it's, I tell my kids, we all live in a prison. They're just different sizes, right?
mhm,
She lives in the smallest size prison possible that she created by her own hands. And in early in my journey, I'm like, oh, let me help you. Let me help you. She doesn't want it. And that gets
yeah.
to be okay for me. I get to witness her living a very miserable in prison life and be okay with the fact that's what she's choosing for herself. But judgment doesn't do anything good for us either because that creates shame within our own body. So we
Mm,
get to let go of that and say, it's just all good. Whatever experience someone chooses for themselves, it just gets to be perfect.
mhm. Yeah. It's really hard to do with people you love. Then
I
you're the
know.
people that are close to you.
I
It's
know.
so
I told you
hard.
for me, it's like my kids. It's
Yeah.
the hardest for me to watch them suffering. Like it's so hard for me. But then I have to remember suffering is a gift.
Ooh.
I have to remember that. And so I let them. I let them carve their own path. And I even tell them, I'm like, I would love to be able to swoop in and save you, but I know, like, for instance, if there was this kid in my 14-year-old's class and he was like slapping her around with his phone, hitting her head,
Oh
calling
my
her a
goodness.
whore and a bitch. And I was just everything in me wanted to go down to that school, wanted to find that boy and his mom and every single person that hurt him.
Yes.
But then the bigger side of me, the spiritual side of me, had to look at it and say, my daughter has to learn this lesson for herself. Because if she doesn't learn it here, there will be another lesson and another lesson. So all I do is I say, babe, I can give you my wisdom, what I do, and then you get to choose. And I say, here are 3 options. Did she choose any of them? No. And I have to let it be okay, right? It's
Yeah.
really hard to watch our kids suffer, but we have to be
Yeah.
okay with it because we have to know that the suffering is necessary. And I'm not going to be here forever.
Mm.
I'm not going to be
Save
here
them.
saving her, 40 years down the road when she didn't learn the lesson all those times. And I'm going to be gone. She's got to learn the lesson.
Mm. Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I'm one of those people too who I'm always like, wait, but I can help you with this. I can help you. And I have a business coach for my business. And I'm one of those people that, like, when she gives me advice or she tells me to do something, I'm going to do it more than likely. So there's been a couple times I have this group of other hairstylist gals and we support each other, lift each other up, whatever. But like when it comes to needing to do a price increase or firing a client or something, this is all stupid business stuff. But I'm always like, why aren't you doing that? We all told you to do that. Why aren't you doing it? Because it's the same kind of thing on a much lighter scale. It's like
It's the same exact
you,
thing.
but you can fix this. You can choose to fix this and make it better for yourself. And we've all given you the advice. So just do it. Just do
Hmm.
it. I actually reached out to my business coach one time and I was like, I don't know how you do this every day and coach these people every day because people do, they have to want to fix it themselves. And it's really hard, I think, when you, from the outside looking in, a solution or something like that, that you think that will make their lives so much better, but they choose the harder path. And it's so hard to let that go. And I have had to learn that lesson the hard way with some family. So it's tough.
Yep. I had to learn that too before I branched out recently to generalize myself more, but I was specifically just focused on women in marriage to save their marriage. And what I was finding is I was attracting a lot of women in very unhealthy dynamics. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to help you save your marriage because your husband is actually abusive.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you got to help me. And I'm like, this is not in alignment. I want to help. My desire is for you to get healthy, for you to heal yourself. And whatever relationships, they get to fall where they may. If he doesn't want to get healthy, he's got to go.
Mm,
So I was finding that I was attracting that. And I said, this has to shift. Like, I'm
yeah.
not focusing on marriage if I'm just getting these really unhealthy dynamics. And I've made this shift, and it's doors are just swinging wide open for me because it's more in alignment
Yes.
to what I want. My desire is for people to heal. I don't care about saving your marriage.
Mm.
I don't
Well,
care about
because
saving your marriage. I care about you healing, because if you heal, then what happens is your spouse either has to heal, or they have to kick rocks. But if
mm-hmm.
you are going to stay low just to keep him around, it doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to be more committed to yourself rising than the relationship. And there was no surrender. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore.
Mm.
You have to be very selfish when it comes to your healing journey. You have to recognize that being selfish means that you're doing the best for everyone else, because you're saying, I'm going to get good and filled with my source, and then I'll be of great help to you. But until then, I have nothing to give, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing I tell my kids is I have to serve me first. I have to make sure my mind is right before I go and start trying to parent you, because I'm just going to be an asshole.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be this, just the human part of me, where I want to love you as the all that is really the biggest part of who I am.
Oh, healing is so hard, but
Yes,
worth it, right?
but living with the pain, I'd
It's
say, is more
harder.
difficult. Like, it's, you know
Yes.
how they have that. I love that expression, pick your hard. Marriage is easy. Marriage is hard. Getting divorced is hard. Pick your hard. It says having kids is hard. Not having kids is hard. Pick your heart. I love that, because I've found that to be true. It's like every married person is not happy. Every single person is not happy. Every parent is not happy.
Yeah.
So the list goes on. And then what's the common denominator is that happiness is not circumstantial. It can
Mm.
never be circumstantial. We think, oh, when I have that thing that I really want,
Yeah.
I'll be happy. No, you won't. If you're not happy before you get that thing, I can rest assured you're not going to be happy when you get that thing. And
Yeah.
that's why I tell people, if you don't do your healing journey before and you're like, oh, I want that spouse so bad, my soulmate, this and that. No, you don't. If you're not healed, you do not want any relationship.
So good. I think I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the divorce conversation because I've had a lot of friends now get divorced, and I think that, and my parents are divorced, but I think that is a very traumatic thing that even if amicable, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Even if amicable, it's very traumatic thing to go through. And I see so many women just in my line of work and friends that I've had that just jump right into the next relationship after that and don't do any type of healing before from that divorce because I don't know if it's a fear of being alone. I don't know what that fear is, but even my own mother did it. Like my mom, I think even before the divorce was final, she was dating someone. And I was like, what are you doing? Because I was 19 years old when my parents got divorced. What are your thoughts on that since you've worked with a lot of people in those situations? Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's my mom. After my dad died, my mom moved on very quickly. My dad was gone, what, 4 months when she started talking to her ex-boyfriend, who she ended
Oh,
up marrying, which was awful for us, by the way. We
mm.
didn't, when you're that young, you don't understand death. So she's moving on, and I haven't even started grieving yet. None of us kids
Yeah.
had even started grieving yet, because you don't understand the finality of death. So here I am at 13, I get my 3 adult hormones, and I'm like, my dad's never going to walk me down the aisle. I'm never going to see him again.
Oh.
You don't realize it until 13 when you get those adult hormones. So there's that aspect of, yes, the children might suffer just because
Mhm.
are they understanding what's happening? But I think a big part, there's so many different ways I could go, but with divorce, I don't think it has to be terrible. I think if our system was created in a way that it wasn't like, let's break everything in half,
Mhm.
like back in the day when we were in tribes,
Yeah.
marriage wasn't this solid thing. It was like, let's try this out for 7 years and then assess whether it's working or not. And then if they decided it really wasn't working, they'd part ways. There was no big thing about it. We were in tribes. But now, because of our systems, that's why I
Mhm.
say marriage has to change in the future, because the system of marriage isn't working for us. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of it, where both people are viewing, oh, I'm losing half of my money. I'm losing XYZ. We still view divorce as losing a ton of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I could go on and on with the list. But then there's the other part of it where what is the child actually experiencing? They're experiencing a fear of safety, of not being safe.
Mhm.
That's the trauma that they're actually facing in the moment, which is the same thing I faced, right? So divorce, death, it
Yeah.
of course we all perceive it through different lenses, but I don't think divorce itself is bad, and I don't think it has to be this big awful thing. I do believe we created it that way, and
Yeah.
that's why people are opting not to get married. That's why I think if the system of marriage doesn't change and become more user friendly, it's going to go extinct,
Mhm.
because it's just this big, horrific deal to part ways, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Like we vibrate very high. If we have a partnership, can we just not shame ourselves when that partnership no longer serves us? Like,
Yeah.
what's up with that? I like if I say to my clients, if something, my husband and I have been together 18 years, but if something happened between us and we were to part ways, I would want to do it with so much love. Like, I want so
Yeah.
many great things for you. I want you to thrive. I want you to find everything that you want. I would send him off with love. I wouldn't be like, well, but
But
that's
that's
from this
how a
place
lot
of
of it
healing,
ends. Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so it's really that healing piece. If you don't send that person off with love, you are not setting yourself up for a good relationship to come next. And
Yeah.
if you aren't healing yourself and working on yourself and grieving that relationship, then you are not setting yourself up to find a healthy partnership. You just aren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like with my mom, I feel like she didn't even allow herself to grieve, because she
Yeah.
found out my dad had AIDS 10 years before I did. So she said, I
Oh,
grieved that
wow.
whole time. Yeah. I wouldn't even, I shouldn't even really be here, because back then they didn't find out till later. And my mom was pregnant with my brother who came after me when they found out he had AIDS. Really, none of us should be here.
Mm.
But miraculously, we are.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't my time to go. But
Mm-mm.
where was I going? But the grief, she got with my stepdad. I think she grieved for many years in a relationship with him. So he got to deal with her grief.
Mm.
So there's no right or wrong way to human. We all have to go through what we're good, have to go through. Trauma is a gift to us. We're all on this journey to heal, and we could stop judging all of it. Yes, divorce can be really difficult, but it could also be really beautiful.
Yeah.
Just heal. If I give any
Yeah.
advice to anyone, it's no matter what you've been through in life, you if you healed it, you would ripple out so much beauty into the world. And you don't even have to have kids in order to reflect that back, because every relationship is going to reflect back to you the beauty of the healed version of you.
Mm. I love that. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for
Yeah.
sharing all of that and all of this and everything. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So, if somebody is listening that wants to work with you, I can link websites, social media, all the things in the show notes. And then you have your podcast too. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your podcast so that some people can go over and listen?
Yes. Juicy podcast. Never been done before. Basically, I am taking someone through a session. It's called Behind the Veil. So They are completely anonymous and they come on and I ask them, hey, what is the biggest pain point in your life? What is the biggest pain point theme in your life? We pinpoint it. And then I take them back through a process, subconscious process, to the place where it was developed and we heal it right there on the spot. So you get to watch my transformation. And I love it because it's not only a free transformation to the person who's on the podcast, but to anyone who listens. And of course, for me, I receive I receive so much each and every time I take a person through
Yeah.
any process. So it's a give. It's an upgrade for everyone. So if you want to be on the podcast, I'd love that. If you want
Yeah.
to work with me, if you want to put my link tree up on there, you could book a discovery call if you're interested in doing this work for yourself. But yeah, looking for people for the podcast. So that would be a great first step.
All right. Awesome. And do you do mostly one-on-one conversations with people that want to work with you on a regular basis, or do you do any group?
I offer both because I
Okay.
really think there's great healing in both.
Yeah.
Just like I said previously, it's like for you to witness someone else go through, maybe you're always going to get something out of it. So, it's so powerful to have a community of people who are going on their journey with you because you guys are going to be experiencing it together and have each other,
Yeah.
not just me, but each other. So I think there's power in both. And they're like, it's all do the group thing with the private sessions as well.
Okay. Awesome. Do you have any parting last words you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I always share the same thing. But it's because it's made the biggest impact on me. There is nothing in your life that you can't change. There is no circumstance, no identity that you are stuck with. So if you are, whatever you're experiencing, whoever you believe yourself to be, you can change anything about your life. Don't stay stuck or stagnant because I think that goes against us as souls, as spirits. We are meant to expand and grow. So don't go back, go forward. You could create anything in your life you could possibly imagine.
Mm, I love that. Thank you so much for
Thank you for
coming on
having me.
here. Yes, and having this conversation. It's been amazing. And you've given us all so many good little nuggets. So I can't wait to go back and re-listen to all of this because I learned a lot too. Thank you so much, Tammy, for coming
Yeah,
on
thank you for
here.
having me.
And yeah, if you guys want to connect with her, check out the show notes. And thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.